Alrighty. Welcome everybody to the Internet on Mondays, episode 2. I'm joined by Kuro Kitsukami.
And I'm joined by Unbreakable. Today we are going to be discussing a couple different things. As usual, 3 topics. Topic number 1 is going to be extraterrestrial contacts, regarding the recent news and articles regarding that. Topic number 2 is going to be a very, very interesting Friday facts of this week, which is going to be Friday facts number, I don't remember which one it is, 194, which is has a very close resemblance to the actual process of game design, which I'm kindly how the fuck do I call this? God damn it.
Which you're interested in.
I fucked up this thing. I lost my train of thought. Okay. And number 3 is again another topic of being close to game design, which is modding. We're going to be continuing discussing the Hyperloop mod, which Unbreakable has made quite a lot of progress in.
Well, sort of. I at least started it, so it's an actual mod now, so it has a license now. So everybody who has watched episode 1, yeah, you can't do that anymore. We're already doing it. Now I have it licensed, so fuck you guys. On a more serious note, let's get into the first topic. SETI and extraterrestrial life, a very interesting topic for me. I've been interested in aliens and fascinated by aliens since I was a little kitty, you know, a couple of years old. Always was interested, always looking at the sky, trying to find a UFO, you know, alien technology and shit. Anal probes and all that kind of stuff.
Always very cool and fascinating. Discussing those things, looking at in the sky, and mostly like trying to figure out which of the news articles are actually real and which aren't, which of them are actual info and which are just scam. But recently there was a very, very interesting news article on space.com, which doesn't really have that much to do with aliens and mostly with mathematics, but it brings up a very interesting problem of if we meet them, how do we actually talk to them?
Right, because aliens don't... I mean, obviously, if we're talking like sci-fi kind of stuff, we can talk about that in a bit. If they have some kind of like language thing where they can just take our English, for example, and translate it to their language with a machine or something, but that's a thing for another time. It's more about how and what kind of language we would use to talk to them. I mean, we can't talk English to them, we can't use Chinese or any of the human languages per se in this regard. So what would be the next best idea? And obviously math is the next best thing, because that's widely known, presumably. We don't know, but we just presume.
Mathematics is basically the only actual abstract language that is accessible to humankind, because every single like actual language that we speak in, it consists of things specific to human race and nature, and most likely specific to a certain nation that speaks this language. But math is abstract. It doesn't. It's not connected to human life. It's connected to the universe itself. It can be derived from the way that the universe behaves, and thus it's safe to assume that if math is a thing, then it's the same everywhere where it's being studied, whether that be in university in Moscow, in university in somewhere in Chicago, if there is one. Is there any? I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably.
Or like in a distant, or maybe not so distant star / planet that orbits that star. Maybe, I don't know, maybe even like the
couple hundred light years.
Yeah, or the usual Alpha Centauri that is being used in every single sci-fi thing ever. Because
or
it's
Andromeda.
Close stars. Or Andromeda. Yeah.
It's kind of close. Kinda. We're talking cosmic scales. Kinda close. So it's very interesting how they're talking about how we would actually like meet them and, you know, talk to them. Obviously, like we said, mathematics is the next best thing. I mean, if you look at the space plaque that was brought on to the what was it called? Yeah, Voyager. Or any other like post, what do you call it, solar planetary kind of thing that goes like beyond our
beyond solar, basically. Yeah
you know what I mean. I can't find the English word right now, I'm terribly sorry. You can see under there's a hyperfine transition. I hope I said that correctly. Please correct me in the comments down below. Where it basically states the wiggle room of 2 electrons within a hydrogen atom, and obviously hydrogen being the most abundant element in the universe, is known to a very, very specific degree, right? So you can make a second out of it, you can make a light year out of it, you can make meters out of it. So there's that. And that has been used quite a lot. So, we already sent space homework out into space, if you will.
Yes, basically.
Basically.
Sorry. So it's very it's sort of obvious and intuitive, but very difficult to actually use those things, because on one hand, reality is the same everywhere. Whether you pick a hydrogen atom anywhere in the universe, it's most likely going to be the similar hydrogen atom. Thus, you can use its parameters for defining standards, for defining wavelengths, for defining sizes, and because it is also going to move and oscillate, like the wave that is going to
it will
produce.
oscillate at a very, very specific frequency.
We get to the concept of time,
right,
and length, and that's basically everything you need to get into contact with somebody. But then it comes to a very specific problem.
Which is?
What do we say? What
Obviously,
do we tell them?
The big issue, we can't just say it will become MPs. It's like it will be the same thing as what happened to North America when the other dudes invaded them. They're gonna be enslaved. And that's my personal opinion, even though I love the idea of extraterrestrial life, aka aliens. If they find us, most likely the same thing will happen to us, quite honestly. I mean,
it depends on technological differences. The reaction always depends on technological differences, because
let's just assume they're coming to us.
They are coming to us. How do they know where we are?
Let's just say they have some super technology advances and they see dinosaurs and they were interested in it and all that kind of garbage, and they see man life. Let's just assume they know we are here. Let's just assume they know we're here.
So it's more like of them just coming to us without us signaling about our existence to them. Well, so they just come to our planet and then they find out that we are here.
Let's just say they know they were looking for other. Let's say they're also intelligent life, right? So they're most likely gonna do the same thing, which is look for other intelligent life. Makes sense, right? So what they're gonna do is look for extraterrestrial planets. The Earth is one of them. They use some extra technology that we don't have any idea of, that seems like magic to us now just because we don't have any idea of what's behind it. And see humans, right? So they know, okay, that seems like intelligent life, we're gonna go there. So they go there with some drive. And basically, let's just say they teleport to us just to make things simpler. Right?
Okay.
So they come to us, they're about the distance of the moon. We recognize them, and they signal us that they want to come down here. They come down here. What do we do? What would we do?
That's a difficult question.
At the end of the day, who would be the person in charge? And Vsauce had a great video about that. You can look up. It's about something about alien life. Just Google for it. You will find it pretty easily. And he basically said the CEO of SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Life in the Universe, would be most likely the correspondent to Earth and extraterrestrial life. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, because who else would do it? There is not a single nation that can actually legitimately take in charge of this operation. Especially because it's now and not 50 years ago when the conflict was still in the air between big countries. So now it's kind of we're in a kind of a better state than it was in 1970s.
Way better state than before. Way better state.
No Cold War, at least. That makes it easier a little bit.
Let's just leave that open for another time, though.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, What? Just think about it. What would you say? Like, I don't know what we would say. Like, how do we know how to talk to them? What do we use to talk to them? And coming back to this article on space.com, it's very, very interesting to think about it because math just makes sense. The only problem, of course, is that we have to make certain assumptions, like it says here in the article. Both societies can count and do arithmetic. They both recognize chemical elements in the periodic table. They have a quantitative study of states of matter and know enough chemistry to carry out chemical calculations. These are the assumptions given here on this space.com article, which, by the way, is linked in the show notes, as usual. So full credits to them. But it's very interesting to think about it this way. Because if you have those assumptions, then mathematics is really the best thing. And the only question is, what kind of mathematic do you want to use? Like, do you want to show them what 1 + 1 is, or, you know? It's kind of abstract.
It doesn't really make sense to share math with them. It's more of using it like a tool to understand each other. So those assumptions are, in theory, a must-have if they are able to actually get to us, like build stuff to get to us, and B, they are actually close enough to human beings to actually be able to, to want to communicate, to be able to communicate. So if we assume that they are, I'm not saying humanoid, I'm saying carbon-based life forms.
Right.
Just right. So that they actually have to use oxygen and carbon and
mostly water.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Water, maybe something else, maybe other chemical, but in general they are kind of close to us in that regard. So the point is that math becomes an instrument that allows us to create a system that allows us to translate our languages to one another, because math is limited. Math is amazing because it's abstract, but it being abstract makes it limited. We can start describing abstract concepts with math, which we cannot do without using it. So, like, for example, all those stories about...
Let's just say pi. I think pi is a good example here when we're saying abstract. I don't know if you know the Babylonian way of calculating pi, for example.
Yeah, for example.
Where you take like a hexagon and you take the what do you call it? Not the radius, the
length, and then you start multiplying sides. Yep, that's...
Yeah. You do the reverse calculations, basically, but then you go to higher and higher and higher structures.
Pi is an abstract thing that doesn't really have any application in trying to translate. But I'm talking about general concept of time, concept of space, concept of existence. How do you explain to them what being alive means? What do we mean when we say alive?
That's kind of the same question as a good example. How do you know, for example, the blue I'm seeing is the actual same blue that you're seeing?
And that's where the math and physics come into play, because we can tell them that this is a certain wavelength. And even if they see it in a different way and have different photoelectric cells in their organism, they still can look at the wavelength and see that it's the same wavelength. That's how you can determine, show them the visible spectrum of light, so that they can understand that humans can perceive this much this much light and those sounds, and explain them what sound actually is. But maybe, what if they live underwater and vibrations of the fluid do not play that big of a role, or they are talking, let's say, in a different diapason, like dolphins, for example, right?
Right.
And that's where math comes into play, where global variables come into play.
Speed of
wavelength
light, etc.
of different things, size of different things, temperatures, the different states of matter, when liquid becomes solid, when solid becomes liquid, when it vaporizes, when it becomes
gaseous and plasma and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
like probably also cosmical constants, like I just mentioned earlier while trying to interrupt you. um, Speed of light. It's definitely one of those things we would try to use as a kind of form of communication to like communicate with time, length, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's deeply interesting and very abstract. You don't think like trying to think of using math as like, for example, English is a very difficult manner. Like try doing it yourself. Try talking to your friend in math about your day. Like it's not
It's
easy.
actually an amazing game that exists. Don't think it exists outside of Russia because it was created by a Russian sci-fi writer.
Go for it.
But you have to talk to a person like if they are an alien, and like they don't know your language.
Man.
You have to explain them the basic concepts, and then go from basic concept. No, it takes a long time basically. It's like a free improvisation of a Turing test basically.
Right.
That you don't know who you're talking to. Like, so of course you know because it's your friend, but basically you go into different rooms and you start like, for example, knocking or maybe like sending light signals or maybe like screaming
like,
in different...
Going with like random jiggly bits on a piece of paper. You know, all those like language fonts that you see online?
Your
Something
stuff
like
is
that.
basically getting a Morse system with the 2 light bulbs and two buttons and going in the Morse code and then not using the Morse code itself and inventing your own thing. And you don't know what the other person is thinking about and what they're trying to tell you. But
it's interesting. It's
a game for specific people, to be honest with you.
I would be deeply curious to test it out at one day. Not anytime soon, but it's maybe at some point I will grab one of my buddies and test it out with.
It takes a long time. It takes a lot of patience and time. But as soon as we get to basic concepts, as soon as we get to like time and the direction of time flow and space and waves and light and other radiation things, we can start going to more complex things. Because as soon as we define like the range of light that's visible to us, so where do they want to look at? If they have enough tech, they can, and even we can basically make something that is going to transpose from that spectrum to their spectrum, like basically 1-to-1 or maybe in a certain ratio. Then we can start drawing, we can start showing pictures, we can start showing movies. We can show them how the world looks from our perspective.
Then like trying... I think we could think of it this way, trying to get one of those Indian tribes that live in North America, or, you know, African tribes or whatever, any tribe that doesn't speak a native language, like English, Chinese, Russian, or whatever, doesn't matter, and trying to learn them to use an abstract language like mathematics. That would be a very interesting test, I'm not gonna lie.
It's actually a very good topic, because I wanted to say a couple words. Because when people started to come in contact with primitive tribes, like the Polynesian ones, for example, or like all those islands in the area of Australia and southern India, they don't have abstract concepts. They do not have abstract concepts in their brain. That's why it was almost impossible to translate different, like certain things to them. Because you can poke and show them a tree, and they're going to say something, and you think that it means a tree, but it means this tree, like this exact tree is being described by this word. Like 50 different
you don't know.
Words for different trees, because everything has to have a personality, because you live in the forest, and the forest lives with you. You have to differ, like, because your life matters on it. Like this tree is a tree.
They might think of it as like, as we say, home. They look at a tree as like,
yeah, or maybe like a food source or danger, like dangerous tree, big tree that covers you from sunlight, small tree that gives you water, small tree that gives you food, medium tree that gives you like poison, and these all different words. But there is not going to be a word for love, for example. It's going to be okay.
Presumably, it's like trying to try to describe a blind person what red looks like, and they've never seen that color. It's almost impossible. Like,
but they still can think. They still have abstract conditions. I still can say that imagine a taste of an apple and then mix it with the smell of rain,
yeah, but
and then
we need
shift
to
it to the
think
side.
in a different way. We need to think in
Yeah.
something that the other person doesn't know.
Yes, yes.
And we know they don't know. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, this is... I don't know what to think about it. It seems so abstract, but also so interesting. So...
That's why SETI exists.
That's why SETI exists. So we're
Yeah,
just gonna
exactly.
blame it on them if the world goes to shit.
And we didn't even start discussing, like, how do we approach them? Because we spent the whole 20 minutes talking about how they approach us and we respond, but how do we approach them? How do we reach out? What do we reach out with?
I mean, at the end of the day, we would probably go the same step as we did with they reaching us, so...
But we don't have the technology.
Of course we don't have the technology, but let's assume we're a Type 3 civilization, right? We can go into space and go wherever we want, right? We find extraterrestrial life, we're gonna go visit them, and let's say they're at the current level of us, and we are, let's say year 3300 or something, right? For us. And they
so
are
we can
just
already
getting...
teleport, but we still are mortal and we still need some food, but we can use complex machines and computers.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think we would go the same way as they would approach us, given that they wouldn't enslave us, of course. But yeah, I think we can leave that for another time. We're already 20 minutes and we have more stuff to talk about.
I'd like to continue discussing the topic next time, for sure. Maybe talking about reaching out on the current level of tech.
We will definitely do a follow-up. This is a very interesting thing. So, speaking of transitions, our next topic, really quickly for 2 minutes or less than a minute, just a quick follow-up to last week.
Which is?
If I can find it. Shit, I forgot. God damn it. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Hold on.
Okay, so you can look for that, and I'm going to quickly introduce the next topic that's going to be after the follow-up, which is that we didn't really discuss side effects and factorio development last time, and we are going to talk about it this time a lot, because 194, which is going to be linked in the description as well as everywhere it is possible to be linked, it discusses a very, very, very interesting topic that is something that is not really, most people don't even think about this usually, because they get the already completed product, and the whole pipeline of actually creating a game, creating objects and models and code gets left behind the scene. And the fact that they decided to talk about it is very interesting. And now you found something?
Deeply interesting. Yeah, I found it again. I apologize for that. But what I wanted to talk about, a quick follow-up to last week's Twitch affiliation. There has been an update that you can, not only from partners, but also from affiliates, you can now buy the game that they're playing. And they get a little kickback. So that's something I found. And I find it very cool. So I just wanted to say that. We can go ahead and...
Is it regarding every game or just some games?
Games that are on the Amazon store. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
It's a more deep topic than I wanted to talk about today, because we would go probably for another 20 minutes talking about that, but we're gonna leave it for another time.
So we don't get money for people buying Factorio, basically.
Since it's not in the store, no, we don't. Unfortunately.
Okay, we should probably find a different game to play that. Not really.
Oh, not really, no. I like Factorio too much. Speaking of Factorio...
PUBG, however. Yeah, okay. So, speaking of
Factorio. Yeah, side effects. Very interesting. Like you said, especially for game design. I gotta be honest, I didn't read through the full thing, but it's still very interesting. And I think for you, more interesting than me. Especially how they go about being very, very, very detailed about it, which is very cool. Which is one reason why I love them so much.
On that. Like your general opinion, like how did you like the post? What do you find, like what looks cool and what looks boring? And then I can go into details. Yeah, for
me, just personally as a game development noob, basically. I don't know much about game development. I know a little bit, but not a whole lot. For me, personally, as a game lover, and that understands that game development is a needed thing to make games, it is very, very interesting. I'm not gonna lie, this is a deeply interesting topic. And
Was
I
there?
find it very awesome how they're showing, obviously them being also factorio players, how they're automating it,
Mhm.
you know, with scripting and all that kind of stuff. So they're automating the process for themselves to make life easy. It just shows, like, how much thought and care they put into factorio, which is very, very awesome. And I love it. That's my opinion on it.
So was there anything that like caught your attention specifically?
I think most specifically it was the general rendering and how they're doing it. Like how they're using After Effects to render things and then use Photoshop and how they go about things. Just generally everything a little bit. Just how everything goes together is very, very interesting.
So modeling is the most fascinating thing, basically.
Oh, well, basically the whole thing. I'm not gonna lie. Like the
Yeah.
whole topic that they're talking about is very, very interesting. As stupid as that sounded, it is very, very interesting for me. So, you know, how they're showing, oh, okay, here's the new ones, and we're doing it this and this way for this reason, and you know, we've automated this to make our life easier, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's very cool how they're incorporating so many different things to make one awesome thing. You know, I always find it interesting.
Okay, so quick rundown from my perspective. Most of the blog post is dedicated to modeling. I feel like almost all of it actually is dedicated to modeling. Like the Lua code is kind of there, but not really.
A little bit.
But it really shows how much stuff do you have to do to actually like test something, how something looks in game. Because Factorio is kind of a unique game in the perspective that it uses two-dimensional sprites for everything. So it's like pseudo 3D game, but everything is still being created as a 3D model. So you can
like
unlike
2.5D, like a 2.5D kind of thing, which is kind of interesting. Kind of reminds me of there was this one Sony game with I think it's called Sackboy or something. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit, and also Terraria a little bit as well. Kind of this like 2D but not really 2D kind of sense.
So having a perspective of depth, but not being actually able to use it properly. So there is no actual height in Factorio, but there is a perspective of depth that still exists.
Well, unless you go into modding, but that's a story for.
It's kind of a
later.
workaround anyway. So like the vertical things in mods and like second layers and like underground stuff is still a workaround, which is kind of clunky.
Yeah, it's more a hack than anything else. But go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was talking about is that usually when you make a 3D game, you can kind of easily make a mock-up of something that you want. Like, for example, Kerbal Space Program modding, which is basically a piece of cake. You use Unity for everything. All the coding is done in C#, hence the Unity. And you can just basically quickly throw a 3D model into Unity, then give it a material, and then boom, you're done. It's already in the game. You don't really have to go through a lot of steps to look how it looks in the game. So you can basically have the game running, and then, or maybe even have Unity running because it's the same as in the game. It's going to look the same, and then make small adjustments here and there into like texture files and like draw something and make it light or make it dark. I enjoy watching KSP modders. Like there are some of them that are streaming the process, and it's really enjoyable to watch. Like as they constantly alt tab to like the actual visualization, that then they can look at how it looks. Because contrary to popular belief, when you create a model in 3D, in like in Blender or in 3ds Max, you can't really catch a full grasp of how it's going to look in game. It usually looks like either darker or lighter, or maybe it's too shiny, or it doesn't have a texture. Of course, it doesn't have a texture until you render it. And in Factorio, it's different. Because this 3D model, you can't put it into the game. You have to go through a lot of steps, which are actually described in this article, and most of them are regarding to After Effects. Because, like, you look in the game of Factorio, and you're like, I think it looks kind of simple, right? So there is an object, there's a shadow, and then it blinks, and there are lights and reflections and like highlights and dark parts. Then you think it's easy, and then you realize that this is not live render, because it would have been easy if there were actual 3D objects in game and the light source that points down and drops the shadow and everything was easy. Any Unity game you played, it exactly like that. And then, like, a sudden realization strikes that everything was drawn by hand. Every single thing is actually drawn. They use Photoshop to drop down shadows. They use After Effects to make it all like look good. Because it has to be a single sprite. It can't be like a multi-layered thing, as in other games, as in like in Minecraft, for example. If I recall correctly, they can use multiple layers for this.
Right, they do, yeah.
So that's...
It is deeply, deeply interesting. I'm not gonna lie, like, something we're gonna talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about modding soon.
Yeah, we're going into our own mod soon, but what I wanted to talk about is I've been looking into spriting, like making the actual sprites, and it's a lot more work than people would expect. It's a shitload of work. Like, I'm actually afraid to do it because, first of all, I don't have Blender, so I would need to, like, probably hand draw it every single side,
Blender
which would
is
just
free.
turn out like shit. Or get a free open source program, which,
Blender is a free open source program.
Really?
That's why they're using... Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. I'm an idiot. Alright, fair enough.
It's just kind of annoying to work in because it's a free open source program. It has its flaws.
Last time I saw it, I thought that it was like selling it for like $80 or $90, but maybe I'm thinking of another program. Might be it.
I don't remember if they like actually like offer you to give them money for it or not, but
I don't know. I'm not sure anymore. I don't know. I can look it up later, but it's anyway still very interesting. I mean, I do have Photoshop and I do have After Effects. This seems like so much work for some of the most simplest sprites, Like, for example, these combinators in game, I never use them because I'm just straight up an idiot with them. I'm not even using them, they're showing like how much work goes into them, which just makes you appreciate the amount of depth they actually put into the game just to make sure everything is absolutely perfect. It's
good thing about
awesome.
the system is though that the pipeline is always the same. So like combinators are just an example, and they're showing like there's a whole lot of steps, and they are constantly talking about how do they want to automate everything, because that's a lot of stuff to do, and they do the same steps for every single entity, every single tile, and it's kind of what makes it a little bit easier. Because as soon as you have the pipeline set up, as soon as you know what you want to do and you have all the scripts and macros for that, you can just again concentrate on drawing textures and making 3D models. It just takes a lot of time to actually test it in game, and if you want to fix something, it's going to take a long time as well. So moral of the story is if you are making a game, you're much better off using a 3D engine and then messing with the camera rather than trying to do something like this. However, 2D sprites make Factorio very, very, very not resource intensive. It's
basically very optimized. Like, it's like, just think about it this way: it only loads one sprite into your normal memory, and then it loads all the like additional sprites that it needs as well, like copying the sprites over and over and over again. For example, for iron plates on your main belt, let's say, it's just copying it over and over and over again, or maybe just using it directly. I don't know. Probably using it directly seems more logical, but it is incredibly optimized, although it is a shitload of work beforehand. It's a lot less work.
Yeah, they spent a few years optimizing it. And for those who actually know what that is, it's the funniest thing I find about Factorio is that like almost every single piece of lighting is baked, so you don't have to render it live. But there are some things, like for example player lights and car lights, and on low-end systems, the like amount of light sources and pixels that are being drawn, like the cubic, what are they called, square something. I don't remember the term in English. Sorry, I can't look it up right now. I had an experience of like playing Factorio on a very low-end machine, like a really low-end machine that didn't get above
potato.
Yeah, like a potato that didn't. I wasn't able to play, I think, anything other than Factorio on it from the interesting games list. So reducing the quality of cone and point lights that were in game actually improved the the frame rate. This is like, to think of it from a Unity game perspective, where everything, or like usually most people don't care about it, so every single light source is not baked, and it is actually like live rendered and constantly checked, and like all of this computation intensive garbage is being applied and constantly, like, it would have just destroyed this potato, and then you have to like disable the shadows and disable the like the
Everything, basically.
disable everything that has to do anything with lighting, and then it's going to fly. Like, I played League of Legends on my old laptop, and shadows disabled, 60 frames per second. Shadows minimal, 15 frames per second. Because every single fucking shadow has to be drawn constantly every frame. And it takes a lot of computational power. And in Factorio, it doesn't take anything. Only thing you have to actually render is basically like a few light sources and a single global
spreadsheet
piece of garbage. Yeah, but the only global light source is basically the sun, which just I think it just changes the intensity of like the ambient light, and that's all. It doesn't affect shadows at all. If you have noticed, the shadows in Factorio don't actually move.
Yeah, they don't move. They don't move,
yeah,
which I don't mind. It's. I think Factorio is one of those interesting games where you come to a point where everything is so optimized that just, like, it makes sense now why they did it this way. Now looking at it, obviously it's a shitload of work. Like, beyond any reasonable doubt, this is a lot of work. But I think personally it's paid off. Although I would probably not. If I would do, let's say I would be the creator of Factorio, which I'm not, obviously, but if I was him, I would probably redo it in a 3D engine, to be honest.
But it leaves less space for optimization, and Factorio devs are all about optimization.
Of course.
As you can notice from about half of the dev blogs about optimization.
I mean, if you look at a very good example where actually Factorio comes from, funnily enough, which is Minecraft modded.
Oh, yeah.
If you have like 100 items on the ground, your fucking FPS drops already like crazy. And here in Factorio, you have sometimes hundreds of thousands of items on the ground. And it's just incredible how much optimization this game has.
It doesn't affect anything because nothing is being done to them. And in Minecraft, even if something, like, even if you don't have any like graphics mods installed, you still have to constantly check where the player is trying to pick them up. Like, the despawn timer is running, and like all this garbage. And then, like, if you look at Minecraft and look at Minecraft lighting, like, you know that, like, if you disable the smooth lighting in Minecraft, everything becomes like
blocky, kind of.
Yeah, blocky, yeah. Because it stops trying to render like smooth light levels.
Right.
And it's a ridiculous improvement on performance. And as soon as you go
I
with
personally played with a lot of these shader mods like GLSL shaders. I played a lot with those because my system could handle them.
And then we talk about shaders and how much they improve.
They make the game look gorgeous. They absolutely
look gorgeous, but it's a ridiculous hit on performance. Why?
It just requires
because
so much
shadows
performance.
Become dynamic. Everything becomes dynamic.
Right.
Because in Minecraft, in vanilla Minecraft, shadows are basically linked to light levels of blocks. Right. And then there is a pretty simple engine that makes it smoother. And when you go to shaders, it becomes disconnected from light levels. So actual light level doesn't have anything to do with this ridiculous looking shade of your building. And then as soon as like the lights and reflections start kicking in like realistic water,
it just goes ham.
Yeah, it just goes ham basically.
Which is kind of funny. So speaking of modding, let's go on to our last part of today's podcast, which is our own mod that we talked about last episode, which is Hyperloop 1 mod in Factorio. We've made some, I've made some little progress.
Technically it's still your mod because I didn't really touch on it, I was mostly talking to you about it. So yeah.
Well, you're gonna start working on it soon enough.
Supposedly.
Hopefully. Because because I have no idea what I'm doing, to be fairly honest. But I've done some stuff to keep it very simple, just to run down what I did. I added most of the fluids. I added a couple items, simple stuff. A little bit of technologies. I'm still waiting for Angel to reply to me, so just to get a little bit more info, so I can maybe get some sprites off of him. But we'll see about that. But I've done some good progress. I also have a you saw it already, the draw.io spreadsheet. The whole what do you call
the
it?
The spreadsheet is. I think we should link it actually to the podcast.
I will link a picture of it. Yeah, because I already spent like an hour or two, maybe even more, probably more to 4 to 8 hours, just on the spreadsheet, just to make sure everything goes nicely together. And now I'm kind of working on the simple stuff, like the items and everything, to get it in there, and then go from there and see what I can do. So I think this is actually a really good approach to modding or general game design, is to actually just sit down and just get a general idea of what you want to do. I think this is like sparing me a lot of time, which I'm kind of happy about.
Yeah, starting with the schema is always a good solution. To know how do you want your final product to look? To try and sort out all the possible problems and errors that might come up, and then choose a proper path for your actual project, so that you don't end up doing something that is impossible to do, and you don't have to change the things that you do in the midst.
Make it work, yeah. Because like I said, I'm working on items, fluids, entities, like the easy things, right? The very, very easy things. So, start getting slowly in, and like I told you earlier today when we were talking about it, before the podcast, that is, I'm deeply interested in this, in general coding. I'm just a complete moron when it comes to it, and now I finally found something to easily get into, which is, in this case, Lua. Even though it's very simplistic, I think over time I can get good enough into it that at some point I can make my own kind of little things, like scripts and all that kind of stuff. So it's very, very interesting, Now, talking about it directly, like I said, I will link it down below. It is probably more complicated than I thought it would be, because I had just a simple okay, we're gonna make the hyperloop in Factorio, right? Very simplistic. But now thinking about it, it actually has a lot more depth to it than I thought it could have.
Okay, suddenly it requires a lot of stuff to do. I feel like optimal situation is when you have multiple people working on such projects. So there is a person that generates ideas, that basically the person who orders this mod to be created. Then there is a person who draws, a person who codes, and a person who makes sounds. Because funnily enough, sound effects are fucking difficult. To say the least.
Well, if you want to make them free, that is. Because otherwise you're gonna have to pay for I don't know, some free online cloud.
It's not even about making sound effects. It's mostly about, as soon as you past the point of no return, when you actually want your thing to be good, you have to start thinking about how it fits together. What do you want? When do you want it? How do you make this shit sound good? You can't just download or maybe buy something and plop it down and
of course
say it's
not.
all right.
Of course not. But if you're making the sounds completely from I don't know, a bowl you have on your computer desk or your keys or whatever, it's much more difficult than just getting a sound file and then adjusting it a little bit in Audacity or something. That's my opinion on it. And even then, you could just use the in-game, you're allowed to use the in-game stuff. So the base game stuff, you're allowed to use them and
of course.
Modify them. Obviously, you can't sell it, but
modifying sounds and recording new sounds is just two completely different things.
Of course.
Because when you record your own shit, you still have to edit it and make it sound good, because you never can record it in the way that it's supposed to sound. There is an amazing video somewhere on the internet. I'm not even sure if I will be able to ever find it again. I just remember watching it about a sound. How the fuck is this even called? A sound technician making
like sound effects
different
and stuff
sounds
like that.
and sound effects and noises for a commercial video.
I think I know which one you're
how he
talking
has
about.
to like rip papers and like tap on with different wooden parts on his table, and then like breathe, and then he even like uses lipstick on himself to make the proper sound of woman putting on her lipstick, and like all of that stuff, and then he's like using all the metal parts to simulate her walking on high heels, and then like the screeching of stuff, and like he put all of this.
Yeah.
And this is, funnily enough, this is pretty accurate. Funnily enough.
Funnily enough, it is. Like, I think I even know which video you're talking about.
Maybe
I think I saw
it
the
went
same.
viral at some point. So yeah,
It might have gone viral at some point, but I know I'm pretty sure I know which one you're talking about. I've watched a couple videos on that, so it's kind of interesting. But I think for our mod, we're just gonna stick with like base game stuff and just adjust it a little bit and just go from there. Maybe
I think it's easy to like find a whoosh sound for a Hyperloop train like going and coming, and like some alarm sounds that are already in the game supposedly.
Yeah, true.
That's not going to be a big deal. But drawing and coding, and the thing is that it's always very cool to do it all yourself. Like have an idea in your head and then like code it and then make 3D models, and then it turns out that it takes so much time and effort because more often than you want it, you have to do it at the same time. You have to modify your sprites, you have to modify the 3D objects, you have to modify the behavior at the same time as you're doing it. Eventually you just stick with something that's like a makeshift 3D model and start writing code, or you stick with like a blank piece of code that does nothing, just makes some sound effects and runs animations, and you start working on the actual like looks of the mod.
Yeah, for example, what I'm doing right now, or what I did today, for example, is I got in like a lot of items and a lot of liquids and technologies, but I just have like a picture, like a basic picture that says work in progress on it. Right?
Yeah,
just because I don't have a picture yet. Like I spent like 2 hours making like, 8 icons for the fluids and stuff, just to make them absolutely right. And then I just said, you know what, I want to code more because I want to learn more about it. And then I just went ahead and just coded more instead of working on the sprites. So just went ahead and just made up sprites like work in progress just for the time being. Just call it a day.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
So again, much easier to work together on those things than rather than doing it alone. But
Speaking
you have to always cooperate.
Together, though, really quickly, if somebody is actually listening and is interested in working with us, please leave a comment down below. That would be very interesting.
If somebody is a good coder or maybe a good 3D artist, I would really love a good 3D artist, by the way.
Oh yes,
I know this is not a good. This is not a good place to actually ask for those things or like self-advertise. But if you are interested in working at like
with two idiots at a mod, probably is the best description.
No, I was talking about a different thing. I was talking about if somebody is interested in working on a game that involves exploring, adventuring, and combat mechanics, and some very weird-looking characters, and you have experience in creating those 2.5D games with top-down view. Example being like a Hyperlight Drifter, or maybe, I don't know, something of that fashion.
Yeah, Terraria.
I would really like somebody that is able of doing this. At least something. At least draw something, just so that I can get a rough idea of what. Because I can't keep using primitive spheres and rectangles forever in like testing different things and designing levels, because this is kind of, it's getting old, to be honest. Like no textures on characters, no character models, no nothing, just planes and working on behavioral scripts.
Just like work in progress written in Arial over everything.
yeah, that's basically that's getting annoying, to be honest.
I mean, I made my own sprites, I just took like some base game sprites, adjusted them, did some Photoshop magic, and then I got my own sprites. Like, I can post a couple screenshots of my own sprites. I used like the uranium ore for my niobium ore, for example. Readjusted the lighting, the black and white levels. I readjusted the hue and everything, and then it looks like a new ore, basically. So.
And that's usually what people do.
Yeah, like it's usually what people do, and you're allowed to do it, which is fine.
Items.
But if you look at like real good example, Archangel's mods, um, with his Angel stuff, like all of this stuff he made it himself. Like a lot of people don't actually know that most of his graphics are done by himself, which is very, very interesting.
He spent quite some time on it, to be honest.
Oh, he's spent a lot of time on it, presumably. But then again, like I said, somebody's interested in it, let us know. Maybe you want to work
Also,
on a mod.
I really like, it's not like I really admire modding community in general, because people do it for free.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's like it's only now that Patreon and stuff exists, like for
or you can just use
years.
PayPal. Like I know a
Or
lot
like
of modders that
donations.
use PayPal as a donation source, or like, if you really like what I'm doing, come to my Twitch stream or whatever, you know.
Yeah, and at some point, like people didn't even think that they can ask for money for that.
Yeah,
like
there was actually a
some
time
of
where
them
people
plunked
didn't
down.
want to ask for money, and then there came Steam along and tried to monetize mods. Fucking idiots.
No. Yeah.
That was a big fail. But it's still very, very funny. And speaking of, you know, modding, like now looking at modding communities, just in general, really quickly, just as a side note, like one of the biggest modding communities obviously being Skyrim, and another one being Minecraft. What, no? What are you saying, no?
No, I didn't say no, I said yeah. I said or something like that.
God damn it.
I think it's some networking error or something or whatever.
Oh, maybe.
Keep
No,
going.
anyways, like I said, one of the biggest ones, definitely Skyrim, Fallout 4, Minecraft. These are probably the biggest modding communities that I know of. There might be bigger
Speaking of
ones.
Fallouts 4, the new the controversy with paid mods, that was announced by Bethesda.
Just leave it
Jesus
be.
Christ.
Just leave it be. Don't worry about it. Just leave it be.
I can't. I can't. This is too good.
Just leave it be. Otherwise, we're gonna talk about how monetization of mods is bullshit for the next
okay,
10 hours.
Okay.
But in general, you know, if you look at these big ass communities with those giant mods, and like I mentioned earlier, Factorio actually came from Corarex playing Industrial Craft in Minecraft at the time a couple years ago, which I already knew about. Like I was playing it like nobody else, you know, I was having my fun with it. And I was wanted a game kind of like Terraria, where it's like a top-down view, you know, 2D, 2.5D kind of thing. But it's all about automation, kind of like Minecraft modded, where it's just like you need to automate everything so you can kill the Ender Dragon, like the ultimate Ender Dragon or whatever, you know. Seems very cool to me. I always liked that concept. And now that Factorio exists, I'm super drawn into it. And this is actually my first time coding, and my first time coding goes into Factorio, so that has to
This
mean
game is
something.
very mod friendly, in my opinion. I feel like
yeah.
it's one of the not regarding the ridiculous pipeline for getting your items into the game, like I mean the actual visuals for entities and stuff. It's very mod friendly.
It's
Because
incredibly easy. It's incredibly easy to just add an item into the game. I had my first item within the first 5 minutes of, like, Lua.
Like I remember starting modding with Kerbal Space Program, and I really wanted to kill myself after a couple of hours, because even though making a game in Unity is a very good idea, it means that you by default require that a person who's trying to make a mod knows Unity, and Unity is like a big and complex thing, to be honest. Like it
Definitely not
engine
as
for
easy
game
as
design.
Lua. Definitely not as easy as Lua, without a doubt.
Yeah. And again, Lua is has a much lower like entry level for coders rather than C#, for example, or even like JavaScript. And yeah, what else? There was something. Yeah, I remembered one very small game that I don't think anybody even knows about right now, because it kind of died off. It's called Corneroids. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe not.
Wait, what?
Corneroids, like a Minecraft in space with 6 degrees of freedom and separate like asteroids and objects having separate relative coordinates to each other.
No idea what you're talking about. You gotta give me that
It
name.
was like in the super early alpha, was created by some Finnish guy, I think, and it died in very early development. And the dude is still alive, he's just not working on it. And
that looks so much like Minecraft. That is ridiculous.
And modding for this game was very easy. but very hard because it was so
What
limited.
now? What now? It's very easily hard, or
So it was very easy to add your own blocks,
oh,
but you
okay.
couldn't alter the game itself.
Oh, okay, okay, fair enough.
No scripting,
Okay.
no coding, nothing. Just you can do stuff, but it doesn't work. And I made a pretty big. It was called resource or something like that pack, maybe tile set. I think, yeah, tile set. It's called,
Right.
or even block set, because you basically add blocks into the game and other things. And all it took was using Photoshop and drawing a lot of textures, and then using a simple data structure to implement it into the game.
Right.
And then I realized that I can't do anything else because you can't write any code, you can't alter the game state, you can't do anything other than like
So you sat
expand
there,
the existing
you
game.
sat there for like endless hours making these perfect sprites, and then at the end of the day, you're just like, oh, great, there's no use for them because there's literally nothing I can do with those sprites other
Well,
than
no,
just look nice.
there are some things that I've remade the game using my sprites with like different generation settings, different recipes, different like extra late game power things. So like it's basically if you make a mod for Factorio, like using the existing assembler and minor sprites, just recoloring them and then making them like tier 4, tier 5, tier 10, tier 12, and then enjoying the game like that.
I mean, if you look at Angels, for example, it completely rewrites most of vanilla. Like, it's actually kind of surprising how much vanilla is, like, just gone. It's very, very interesting. Like, there's still a lot of it in there, but just altered in a way.
And that's why I love Factorio.
It's
it
amazing.
You to
I mean, you can
game.
load the core game without ever needing to load the base.
The base game is actually a mod, so like the Factorio itself is basically a platform for modding that they are working on, and they're making a mod. Their game is a mod for itself. It's recursive.
It's kind of funny. It's incredible. It's just absolutely incredible, which is one reason why I love this game so much. The modding API, they actually have an API just for modders. Like, if you go into the Lua .factorio API or whatever,
Lua-api.factorio.com,
yeah,
and choose latest version, and then there is everything you ever need. And if there is not something that you don't find there, you can go into like game files and just open them in text editor. Because like things that are written in C++ and not accessible to public are like the very backbone that you won't ever need, like the data structures themselves and the behavior and the game loop itself. And you don't want to touch the game loop, because if you touch the game loop, then it means that you broke the game. You're better off just making your own game and using Factorio tile sets as tiles, and
going from there rather than trying.
Yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah.
If you want to get into disassembling the code itself, you're better off just writing your code, because there is not much of it, and it's pretty difficult to get into, like cracking C# complex data structures and stuff. Yeah, okay. Let's leave the technical stuff to people who know technical stuff.
Yeah, which is not me. So yeah, it is very interesting how they're doing it. Like, this is the only game I know of that is basically a mod of its own game. Like, can you name me another game that does it this way? Probably not.
No, I don't think so. There might be something, but I don't really know of. But I don't think so.
I can't. I know a lot of games, so it's interesting.
It's a good idea, by the way. Like in terms of game development, to if you want to make something that is kind of a sandbox or maybe like heavily modifiable, to like create a backbone, and then create an interpreter for a more high-level language. For example, like using C-based languages as a backbone, and then using Lua or even Python for more complex stuff. Because it means that everybody can like modify the game, but nobody can touch the essential
right, the
part,
core,
the neural system, the
core of the game, the brain of the game. Yeah, so it's deeply interesting, and I love the approach that they did it in. I just love it. Yeah. It's amazing.
It also might sound like a little bit boring, so that we are just sitting here and saying that it's cool, but it actually it's
incredible. Like, there's no other game that does it this way. So just think about it for a second. Like, there's Minecraft that you can't really adjust, to be honest. You can, but you will most likely bork up the game. And if you want to mod, you actually need an external API from other modders, so you can actually mod for the game, and even then it's super, super janky and glitchy and not optimized at all. Then you have Factorio, which is completely optimized for this kind of stuff, which is just absolutely mind-boggling. So, you know.
So yeah, to anyone who is at least semi-decent in coding, I definitely recommend trying to write something, Factorio, just to get the feeling of it, because Factorio provides you with a way of making your own game without making your own game. You can test some stuff that you might have wanted to like create, but don't really want to make a full game from scratch. Just go on and make mod for Factorio.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that earlier, remember, looking into the files of the base mod, per se, which basically says in the mod-gui.lua, it says, hello script explorer, if you're looking to upgrade your mod to use the mod GUI. This is the kind of stuff I love. Where they actually
support and encourage us.
Where they actually support and encourage us instead of trying to shut us down. Or just not give a shit. They actually support it, which is just absolutely amazing. So I think on that note, we can
slowly wrap up.
Slowly wrap up. So, if you guys have any thoughts towards this episode, or you are a 3D designer, feel free to post a comment or message us directly. Twitter, Discord, and everything garbage like that is in the show notes. Feel free to go into that. And let us know what you think, or contact us, or whatever.
Please, somebody. I need a 3D artist, please. Like, if you're at least semi-decent, I'm not going to pay you money. I don't have any money. But nevertheless, just
you can work for me for free.
Yeah, because I don't get any money from it as well.
Fair enough.
So yeah, just go tweet at me.
You need to pay him money that you can work for him.
That would be nice, but not really.
No,
I don't think it can happen.
It's not going to happen, but go on. I apologize.
No, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening. I really enjoyed talking about game design. I really enjoyed talking about Extraterrestrial, even though we just barely scratched the surface today, because we
barely scratched the surface of anything we talked today, to be honest. We have so much more to talk about, so I think you guys already know what episode 3 is all going to be about.
Yeah, more SETI and advancements on modding development, and maybe something else, maybe something original, maybe something interesting is going to happen throughout the course of this week. Maybe new side effects will be about something.
I hope so, because speaking of side effects, just really quickly, for the last minute, before we actually wrap up, last Friday Facts, or the pre-last Friday Facts, 193. That was pretty funny, because there was nothing about the game itself in it other than they actually sold 1 million copies, which I'm super happy for. They totally deserve it. So,
by the way, they're hosting a party in, next Saturday.
Yep. But they're sold out, so...
Yep. All the tickets are already sold out, and anyway, I wouldn't have been able to get there in time anyway.
Me neither.
Because I don't think I have a proper documents for that as of now. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm kind of not allowed into that country because of relations with, the Balkan. But we will leave that for another time. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you actually listened through the whole thing, thank you very much. We will see you guys next week. Hopefully this time on time and not a day late. And
because now it's actually internet on Tuesdays rather than on Mondays, even late Tuesday to early Wednesday.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much for listening. We will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.